reason I was late was I left my notes at home. And I mean, this morning's lesson I really very graciously or carefully prepared, and I had to call home and have them read to me over the telephone. So I just couldn't get down here quickly enough. Good morning, everybody. Good morning. You all feel very warm to me this morning and touching my heart again. Let's just bring our attention into our centers. There, everlasting, loving arms beneath you and around you and above you, caring for you, a part of the cosmic dance, cosmic harmony that is here to bless you and love you. Then you open yourself up to the spirit that dwells within you, that receives these ideas and intermingles them in your minds to bless you as the weeks and days and years unfold. Thank you, Father, Mother, God, for blessing me in the sharing of this word, that we might all meet together in union. Thank you. My lesson this morning is on commitment. Last week I talked about communion, and I would like to say to you who sent me cards and notes, beautiful cards and notes, thank you so much for sharing with me the loss of my father. It was a very gracious week. And I received so much from you last Sunday that by Monday, it was as if whatever that presence had been around me left, and I returned fully into my life here. This lesson on commitment is not as easy as the one on communion. And there are a number of ways I could give it. I could give it by suggesting that commitment is commitment to anything, that marriage is marriage to the unity work. For those of you who are preparing to become lay ministers, it is the commitment in the marriage to the lay ministry program. For those of you who are involved in works, it is the commitment to work. But I didn't want to try to spread myself out that far this morning. I really want to talk this morning to you about the commitment to loving one other person. And that commitment might be in a marriage relationship. It might be a commitment to a child. It might be a commitment to a parent. It might be a commitment of loving a primary partner to whom you are not married. But as I speak this morning, I'd like you to think mostly in that line. If you want to expand it out into work or other areas of your life, please go ahead and do that. But I want you to know that I'm going to be talking this morning in this series on loving only to the commitment to a special love in your life. I don't care what that love is, but I would like to narrow us into that field because I'm going to talk very specifically to it. We are coming out of a time of throwing the word commitment out and thinking that commitment is something for our forefathers. I think we lived that well during the 60s and 70s. We explored and played with I love your hat. Thank you for wearing your hat. But we really played with not being committed. I think we had a high value on the willingness to leave relationships, to explore, to experiment, and I think that will always be there as an availability to us. However, this morning I really want to talk to you about how I see the nature of commitment and how important I believe that it is in any intimate situation. There is a poem by Gibran on marriage, and I know you've heard. I'd like to read you the first 5 lines from it because, as far as I'm concerned, this rolls into a sense and a feeling what commitment is about in terms of loving a special person in your life. And this could be God. Remember that. Ultimately, I guess it is. But I still want to bring it into the personal this morning. Then Almitra spoke again and said, "And what of marriage, Master?" And he answered, saying, You were born together, and together you shall be forevermore. You shall be together when the white wings of death scatter your days. You shall be together even in the silent memory of God. Let me read those words again. Almitra spoke and said, "And what of marriage, master?" And he answered, saying, and I'll put it in these words, "The one whom you love the most in all the earth," whether that be the marriage relationship or some other relationship, let it be known that this is what is occurring mystically. You were born together, and together you shall be forevermore. You shall be together when the white wings of death scatter your days. You shall be together even in the silent memory of God. Now, for those of you who have been married before or who are presently divorced, that may cause a scurry in your minds. Let's take care of the scurry. This is a simple statement. This is a statement saying that when you blend and bond with another person and make a commitment of love, regardless of how we label that in the everyday world, you have been bonded at the point of the soul. You have been connected and joined at the point of the soul. And even if you do not retain or continue that connection here on earth, it is one that cannot be severed, cut, unwrapped, or unbound at the point of the divine in the sinews of connection beneath the earth's strata. How do you like that? What you just caught a glimpse of is where my mind really runs amok. Where my mind really runs. You see, I see that the connections amongst us all, and at the most intimate places of loving, where we profess our love, that those connections are way beyond the Earth Mother context, that they are like light, and they are sinews or tendons of light that connect. You may go on, have many other relationships, but those with whom you bonded, those sinews can never be severed. And then let me take it a point further and look at those of you who wonder why you are with whoever you are with. Wondering why. Somebody said yesterday in the lay ministry program, I don't understand what it's all about, but I keep being plopped in the most amazing places, and I don't know why I'm being plopped there, but here I am, plopped again, doing it again. And that feeling of plopped has to do with God. And oh, you know, I really mean this. I mean, you know that I tried to retire from this place in 1980, but you know where God wants me to be? Here. And I accept that, and I participate, even though times may be difficult, and they're not. I'm not implying any of that. But what I have had to come to accept within every area of my life, that if I am here, then I am here. Look at the hand, the holy hand. See, if I am here, I am here by the grace of God. I am intended to be here, and I will be here until I am moved out or forced out or pushed out. But since I am here, and it is God's cosmic adventure for me to be here. Which might give you some levity to, why do I keep ending up with this person? You know, you may even remarry them 3 times, and it still may not work, but here you still are. And it may make no sense whatsoever to anybody, and you may fight, and you may have no sexual contact, and you may look at each other with horror, and you may be working things out forever and ever and ever. But if you can, oh God, is it that bad? If you can bring that gracious dignity in it, and it is a gracious dignity, it's giving the thing honor and beauty and dignity when you can say, God intends for me to be here, and get your mind out of the way, stop trying to figure the whole thing out, or give it a label, or say things like, well, I'm learning a lesson. Don't you get tired of that kind of baloney, I'm learning one more lesson. When I get it right, I guess we'll get a divorce. Terrible way to live. You know, I'm just here. When I visualize probably how we come together, I think of the universe as a cosmos of stars. And I think there are magnets in those stars, and now the stars are you people, and those magnets come together and they meet as fireballs in the middle of the cosmos. And what that really is souls meeting in the middle of the cosmos, connecting up and linking together, and they are absolutely on cue but unknown to you. And you can't, whenever I marry a couple, and incidentally, the reason that we're having this re-wedding service here on the 20, whatever it is, Friday night, 2 weeks from this Friday, or it's a week from this Friday, is because we hope that maybe you want to, as a result of this series of lessons or where you're moving yourself, just make a recommitment to that relationship. It isn't any big deal, just a recommitment and a remembrance of what you intended the day you decided to become married, or whether you're married or not, the day you decide to make a commitment to each other. That's a precious, precious thing. When people stand together here, I always encourage them to take a look at the recognition that the day they met, they had no idea at all that they would stand here one day and make this commitment to each other. Well, what happened? Their souls drew them together. They were not a part of the plan, and love took over and bonded them and melted them and wrapped the threads together in union. That's the only reason it makes sense why we fall in love with whomever we fall in love with, don't you know? It's the only thing to me that makes sense about some of the things that happen in our society, things that we look at with aghastness, things like homosexuality and transsexuality and oh, I guess transvitism and all this other kinds of words that creep into our society. We say, what is going on? My only sense is to say there is some divine mystery bringing these things together. And why do mutts marry gifs? And why do the ugly marry the beautiful? And why do frogs marry princesses? You know, I don't know. It has to be something bigger than me. I give myself into it. Now, that's pretty spiritual and lovely and sweet and all that sort of thing. So let's now get down to the gross material plane and talk about what happens after all that melodrama has ceased. You wake up 3 years later and they're still lying in your bed. And your kid's 25 and they're still living in your house. And furthermore, they brought their wife and their children. Or you thought you sent the kid off to college, but he came home. Irma Bombach has written a book that's called The Grass is Always Greener Over the Septic Tank. I thought that would get a much bigger laugh. Isn't that a wonderful picture? You know why? Because all that junk goes into the septic tank area and it fertilizes the field to produce gorgeous green grass. Grass is always greener over the septic tank. I think what happens to us is that after we've been together a period of time, that we get this image of a fantasy, and the fantasy is, well, maybe it's better next door. Or maybe it's better out of the body experiences. Maybe that's why we all go into our spiritual experiences, to get out of the body and into the septic tank. I don't know what it is. But the fascinating thing about it all is that every time we jump over the fence, there's a curious awareness that begins to awaken if you've done it enough times, and that is that maybe I keep repeating what I did on the other side of the fence, and that the nub of the issue of why I keep leaving is really within myself. And maybe what I need to do is come home and take a look at me so that I can make a true commitment to a relationship one day. That makes sense, doesn't it? See, I really do believe in commitment. I'm kind of glad California has come back to New England. I was raised with commitment, and I love it. I mean, it makes me feel a little bit more comfortable, don't you know? But I like to look at those things that cause us to leap out of our present situation and try to go over the fence, only to find that we've landed on the septic tank. I know one of the issues within me is boredom. I get bored with situations. Do you ever get bored with them? I'll never forget, after I've been here 3 years, I called Unity Village and said, are there any other ministries available? I've done it all here. Think about it. You know, don't let me only share my septic tank. And luckily, Bob Sicking said to me, Carol, you know, it's easy to be a flash in the pan, but maintenance is the hardest thing in the world. I'd like you, as you listen to these few things that I have to suggest that might be what happens to us in our relationships that causes us to not be able to continue the commitment, I'd like to have you think about what you come up against that causes you to leap over the fence, run out of the relationship fast and quickly, and keeps you from being able to gain the value of what commitment provides for you. And I'll close the lesson with what I see the beauty to be of the gains of commitment. One of the things that we do that says, that we hope says the grass is always greener on the other side of the, or on the septic tank, is that we blame it on so many other areas of our life, one of which is boredom. I just mentioned that. After 5 or 10 years, you look at each other and you say, well, what do you do now, or what do you say next? I mean, those romantic dinners no longer are romantic. Haven't you noticed? You sit there in an ugly stare. The wine doesn't even turn you on anymore. Even a good French restaurant doesn't work. Or a private room in a French restaurant. So you say, well, who's next and what's next? And the answer to that is, so what? And there's a loud echo to that. And the loud echo is the one that you have to live with in order to maintain a committed relationship. There isn't any what's next. There isn't any who's next. There is you and me now with us deeper. You see, every time you leap out, you avoid contact, depth, and communion. And if we keep leaping out every 2, 3, 5 years, then we never have the opportunity for the richness of age, of a good wine. Another thing that we blame our relationships on is that the loss of passion disappears. I heard on a game show about 4 years ago, and I use it in almost every wedding ceremony, that passion lasts anywhere from 6 months to 3 years, and after that you've had it. That's a fact. And then, of course, what happens in a marriage relationship where you've never had any passion? Then you're really in trouble. And the real question there is, what will connect us? You know, if there isn't animal attraction, which is what we depend upon in order to keep us together, that seems to be the root of where we hope to connect. Then what do you ride on? What do you have? And so we jump out of the relationship to the grass that's greener over the septic tank. And another thing that we blame our missing relationships on is the loss of loving feelings. And those loving feelings that aren't there every single day, and the loving feelings that we blame upon the other person because they're not being loving to us. And our own inability to be able to rekindle our loving feelings for the others, and our inability to create that spark of connection, and our inability to be able to go out and bring the fire to the relationship again in a new way, in a deeper way, in a point of communion. We blame it on that, and because we lose our loving feelings, we say, well, I don't love him or her anymore. And you can't not love somebody whom you've loved anymore, because you love them, and you are bound together, and together you shall be forevermore. That's a truth of consciousness of the mystical plane. So what are you doing? You're blaming it on the relationship and you jump out of the relationship to the grass that's greener over the septic tank. Another thing that occurs in relationships that causes us to no longer be able to commit is that we experience distance. And you know, distancing is a difficult part of our society today, and the distance occurs because of social pressures. I think it's awfully difficult in relationships to be able to observe them and say, how can we, when we're trying to catch Bart at 5 o'clock in the morning, or when we're driving in and out in that terrible traffic to and from San Francisco, or even now here in Walnut Creek, and when you're trying to raise 4 children, and you're trying to get enough money, and you're trying to keep the cars going, and keep the appointments going, and keeping the dogs at the vets on time, and getting the rabies shot. That's the only one I know about, you know. When you're trying to keep the house clean, you want to add to the list, and you're trying to buy the groceries. How do we ever have anything happen between us except to distance? I mean, that is survival, isn't it? To distance, you move away because you come home and you look at that person and you say, oh my God, and I have to give to them too? You ever hear that in your mind? I'm the only warped one here? I mean, and isn't it one in your life, aren't they the one that somewhere in the soul of you asks the most without ever opening their mouths? You almost want to punch them in the nose. So why don't you leave so I can get my life together? And then you blame them because there's distance. And what we've forgotten is that the tides come and go, you know. The tides come in, the tides of love come in, and the tides of love go out. And when they go out, we must learn to not be threatened by that, but to let them go out until when they gain the energy of life again, they can resurge and come back in again. And oh boy, that's probably the most important thing to remember in a relationship is that you will feel as if love has gone. You will feel as if loving feelings have gone. You will feel as if passion has gone. Trust it, trust it, trust it, trust it, trust it all the way through and let it go out. And try not to tear each other apart in the process until it comes back in again. Do any of you understand or appreciate that? Thanks for a few nods. I hate to be all alone. Another way in which we try to find the grass being greener over the septic tank because we leap out of relationships is that you ever find yourself moving contrary to each other because you can't get what you want, then you end up trying to sideswipe the other. Have you ever done that? Huh? Am I the only one? So we then move at cross purposes. And as long as you continue that kind of behavior, where you try to undermine your partner, or undermine the person in the world whom you love the most, well, you can be sure you're going to have to jump out of the relationship. The only answer is to get your ego out of the way and let them have their life and get your fingers off them. If any of you read the front page of Center Point this month, it said, keep your fingers off each other. Hard to do. We're all still very much living out the animal nature, the law of the jungle that says this is my den, and in my den you'll do what I want you to do. And then the last one that we blame the loss of relationship upon is that our sexual unions lose their integrity. When you bond with another sexually, you know that it's a very powerful thing that occurs. It's a compelling experience that occurs. And gradually that union dissipates. And when it dissipates, we tend to quickly want to jump over the fence because, again, we've rested so much upon the sexual unification, which is a part of our animal nature, and there's nothing wrong with it at all. But with that kind of thing, we will leap out of it, and we don't realize that when we bond with each other sexually, there's something terribly powerful we share way beneath our roots again, that if anybody defiles it in the relationship, you place scars in the soul and the psychic nature that are very, very difficult to ever heal. But that dissipation of the sexual union and the mistreatment of it out of frustration and aggravation is what causes us to leap out of our own yard and over to the grass on top of the septic tank. So if somebody like me ever suggests, why don't we commit? We get really scared inside. And I'm really surprised at the scare that happens inside. Maybe I'm not the person to talk about it since I have never been formally married. But when somebody suggests that you make that kind of commitment, there's some kind of a hue that rises up inside of us and we say, oh no, that is much too big for me to ever take on. I can't possibly make that kind of a commitment. Well, I'd like to see if I can help make that easier for you. If you make a commitment, it only means to make a commitment one day at a time. And for you lay ministers who are about to make some kind of a commitment, and this is probably unfair because I said I would try to keep it to the marriage relationship, but you're only making that commitment for one day at a time. That's the only way you ever made a commitment one day at a time. All that's asked even of you with God is make a commitment to God one day at a time. You can cancel any minute you want. Just make the commitment now, and now again, one day at a time, no more. My marriage ceremonies, I say to people, would you please, each day, at some important time of the day, come together and look at each other and say, I choose to be married to you again today. And you can change the words, I choose to share my life with you again today. It means nothing about tomorrow. Just make a commitment for now. You know, the older we get, the more easily we make those kinds of commitments. And when you find it impossible to continue the commitment, and it feels like you're going to come close to breaking up because the old glue's all dried up, I'd like you to hold this in your mind. You could be just ready to break through. Maybe you could shift the word breaking up to breaking through. And all it takes, the difference between breaking up and breaking through, is just a hair of a second waiting longer. Just wait in that infinite void 1 second longer. You know that. Those of you who have been at it for a while. That's the only difference. What does commitment mean? It means just to love. That's all, just to love. And when it suggests that you love, it means to love completely and with a sense of forever. And as I said at the beginning, you will love forever. You can't get out of it. Your souls found each other. So when you make a commitment, it just means, would you please love unconditionally and forever. Commitment only means to be there through the slum. There's a wonderful joke about a husband and wife who were married for many, many years, and she was a vegetarian. And because she was such a vegetarian, he decided that he would eat vegetarian for her. Well, as soon as she died, he started eating meat as quickly as possible. And one day, went into a restaurant, and he had a very special spiritual experience. They had served him meatballs with gravy. And since he also believed in a kind of reincarnation where you could come back in any form, animal or human. This is one of my mother's jokes. He told his friends that he recognized her through all of that gravy. It's a terrible joke. But you know, that's kind of like loving each other through all of that slime. You know, we're such chickens about relationships. All that's ever asked of you in a relationship is to be there. It doesn't mean to be there with a smile on your face or to be there with a passionate expression or a romantic meal. It doesn't mean to be there with all of your power, your fortitude, or it means to be there with your slime and your ugliness hanging out. Just be there. You know, that's what we really want. Be there. Be there. Keep being there for me. That's what commitment means. Sometimes I really think that what we're supposed to have in life is marriages and good friends. And I think the friends get the best. And what marriages get is all of you. We have to grow up to being able to have all of us, and that's what makes marriages wonderful. And remember, whether it's a legal marriage or whatever your committed, high-power relationship be. And then finally, commitment only means, and this is what I love about it, it means that you get to see each other shine in each other's eyes. And to me, that's what those who hang around each other, why they do it, why they put up with the mess. When my mother said goodbye to my father at the funeral home just a little over a week ago, I was not there. And my sister-in-law told me what happened. She said that my mother picked my father up in her arms for the last time. And she had said she didn't want to do it because the last time she hugged him, she wanted him to be warm. But she went with the family to the funeral home, and Rita, and you know I'll cry, so just let me do it again, but Rita said, she said, I watched the most beautiful love affair I've ever seen, and my parents have been married 54 years. And she said, your mother picked up Harold in her arms, and she said, Harold, thank you for a wonderful life, for giving birth to my children, and for all we shared. She kissed him, and that was her last physical contact with my father. But Rita's words were what touched me, and they are what make commitment priceless. What she said was, I saw a love affair that I never had any realization of the power of it. And what Rita knows is that the truth of my parents' relationship was that they fought well. I mean, I can still hear them hassling over the budget. And you know what probably kept my folks together was that they had a legacy that you stay together. Well, folks, the legacy's gone. Nobody assumes you'll stay together in today's world. So you know who's got to keep you together? Us. You guys. Because there aren't any guarantees built in. My folks had that. And what's got to keep you together? That sense of the beauty that's shared over the multitudes of years. The legacy that's passed on, because something happens when you dare to stay with another person and you live it all out. It's the richness that you can see when you look into each other's eyes, and there isn't any more sex. And there isn't any more passion, but something else has arrived. And that which has arrived has been that you can look into each other's eyes across a room, and so much is shared in that single one look. History, time. We raised our kids together. We bought homes together. We bit the bullet together. We hated together. We fought together. We shouted it down a lot together. But we look into each other's eyes, and that which we share is so much deeper than the excesses or the externals or the quickies or the flights of fantasy. You know how I found it? I found it by being here and daring to stay with you for 15 years. You know what I've gotten back? Not always love. I've gotten back from you what a good marriage gets back. Respect. Love, time, history, nobility, dignity. We survived together. We built it together. That's what commitment provides. Yesterday I went to a Chinese New Year's party. It's the year of the ox, but it's a good one. It's a good one for you to take into your committed relationship. And I thought about Jesus' line that he shares in Matthew 11, verses 28 to 30, and I'll close with this. Because the only way you can survive when you know it's down the tube, when you want to leap over the fence to where the grass is greener, over the septic tank, and it's always over the septic tank, is to remember that Christ lives within you, and when you don't have the reserve, and you don't have the strength to continue on, and you can't remember that what you'll gain is what you've shared, that you mirror in each other's eyes. Just remember that the Christ will allow you and give you that sustenance to pull it through. Just one more day, that's all you need. Come unto me, all ye that labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you, and learn of me, for I am meek and lowly in heart, and you shall find rest unto your souls. For my yoke is easy, and my burden is light. We've tried to make the yokes of marriage and commitment heavy. They're not. They really are beautiful, light-filled, and easy.